A lot of beginners make the mistake of treating shadowboxing like a warm-up exercise. Or worse, they skip it altogether. Let's dive into a few reasons why shadowboxing is important and a few tips on doing it right. By the time you get to the fight, everything you do will be on autopilot. It's a result of either the good or bad habits that you built during training. Shadowboxing is one of the best methods to develop those habits. What you want to do is you want to make sure that you're always working on your foot speed, your balance, your head movement, your footwork. It's the perfect time to visualize the fight, visualize yourself fighting, and practice any techniques and strategies that you have for the fight. It's also great because every single punch you throw is going to be a missed punch. And in the real fight, more than 50% of your shots are going to miss. Unlike the heavy bag, there's nothing there that will provide constant resistance. So you'll be forced to stay on balance, forced to stay composed, and throw your punches the right way. Tip number 1 is to warm up. Shadowboxing should be an intense exercise. It shouldn't be something passive that you do to get to the real workout, right? So in order to do an intense exercise, you have to make sure your muscles are warm, you have to make sure your mind is warm, and you're ready to really put some strain on your body. If you don't warm up and just go into it full blast, there's a high chance that you'll injure something or, in the least case, feel some discomfort in your elbows, your shoulders, or even your lats. So for me personally, what I like to do, I like to focus on my defense as much as I like to focus on my offense. So to warm up, I always warm up in the motion. I don't do things like stretching or jumping jacks or anything like that to warm up if I'm going to be shadowboxing. If I'm going to be shadowboxing, I'm going to warm up shadowboxing. Right, so what I like to do is, for the first round, I like to move my head, move around, move my feet, boom, sneak in little shots here and there, just light, nothing heavy, pop, 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 pop. Move your head a lot, move your feet a lot, get that blood going, boom, defense, try to counter. Think about what you would do in the fight and just let it flow through you. Maybe throw on some music, maybe think about a fight you did really good in, think about something positive, and just loosen up. Loosen up, get those muscles loose. You always want to warm up properly before any boxing session, period, but specifically shadowboxing, because you want to give it your full effort and you want to be able to do so without injury. Tip number 2, and this is especially for the beginners, is to remember to breathe. A lot of beginners don't want to breathe because they think that the sound that boxers make is weird, right? Or sometimes they just forget. So you'll see them doing a lot of this. And they're not really breathing. Right, and what this will cause you to do is get tired a lot faster than you should. You want to really, especially once you get going and get past the warm-up stage, you want to put sting in your shots and you want to breathe, right? You want to... Everybody has their own way of breathing out. For me, it's like that. And I make sure I breathe as I'm moving and breathe as I'm throwing punches. Right, you want to constantly breathe and not forget to breathe as you're shadowboxing or as you're doing any boxing exercise, period. Tip number 3 is to give it all you got. What that means is no bullshit punches. There's a lot of guys that they treat shadowboxing like a passive exercise. So you'll see them, and even some professionals make the mistake of doing this. They'll be very lax about their shadowboxing session. And not just the warm-up. They do this for the whole session. They're just very chill. And the way your brain works, every time you make an action happen, it creates a neural pathway for that action. Right, so if you could imagine a field of grass. If you start walking on a specific path on that grass every day, eventually you'll see a little footpath. If you stop walking on it, that grass will grow back. But if you travel on that path often enough, eventually it will be like a superhighway, and no matter what you do or how long you stay away from it, that path will always be there, and the road will be much easier to get to your destination, right? Your brain works the same way. Let's say I throw a jab, my mind now creates a pathway between a couple specific neurons that says, oh, he's throwing a jab. The more often I do it, the stronger that connection is. The problem with this is it could work for you or against you. If you're throwing bullshit punches, that's the connection that you're creating in your brain, right? So every time you throw a bullshit jab, your mind now goes, all right, so when we do this activity, we're giving shitty output, right? And that's what you don't want. You instead want to train your brain to build the good habits, the stuff that in the fight where is going to happen on autopilot. And what we want to be on autopilot is to be an absolute fucking monster, right? So you want to throw every punch that you have to your full potential, right? And every time you throw it, not just to your full potential, but to the best of your ability, ask yourself, bam, was that the fastest or the hardest that I threw it? Was that good form? Is there anything missing from that punch? Am I moving my head enough after, right? You want to ask yourself, if you're giving your best effort, treat it like a fight. You don't want to just sit there and be way too passive about this exercise. This is the exercise that you want to engage in. So every time you throw a shot, ask yourself, was that the quickest I could throw it? Was that the hardest I could throw it? Let me see if I could do that better. Right? And you want to keep improving every single shot that you throw until you reach that plateau. Right? And then once you reach that plateau, eventually, if you keep throwing hard, you keep throwing fast, your body and your mind are not dumb. They're going to work together and say, this guy is trying to push himself. For whatever reason, he needs to knock out a gorilla. And we need to give him that opportunity to do so. Right? So you got to keep pushing your body to its absolute limits. Don't throw any bullshit punches. Always take mental stock of yourself. Make sure your hands are up, right? Ask yourself, is my static hand, meaning the punch that's not being thrown, so your static hand, is it at my chin when I throw the other shot, right? Is my shoulder snapping when I throw these punches, right? Am I extending? Am I getting full reach on that shoulder? And you got to really just go through a list of these questions constantly, which is why it's important to have feedback in your sessions. You want to have either a coach or a training partner, somebody monitoring you constantly, giving you tips like, hey, you're dropping your hands. Hey, that was a little slow. You're not moving your feet enough. You're not moving your head at all, right? If you don't have that, if it's just you solo training, have a mirror. If you don't have a mirror, we've all got smartphones or computers or something. Throw it up, record your shadowboxing sessions. Look at what you're doing wrong. That's the best exercise outside of sparring where you could analyze yourself and improve your game and take it to the next level. Alright guys, so the next tip is to work on your defense just as much as your offense. For every punch you throw, there should be a defensive movement that you're also practicing. Right? So for me, this includes foot movement, head movement, feints, and parries. Feints and parries are some of the most often forgotten moves when it comes to shadowboxing. Right? That's something you want to make sure you do in every single session. So pretty much pretend it's a fight, right? If you watch fighters like Manny Pacquiao or Floyd Mayweather, they take entire rounds to work on their foot movement. You will see Floyd dancing around the ring, moving around, pop, blocking punches, whoop, whoop. You'll see Pacquiao, who has some of the best footwork in boxing, bouncing around, pop, 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 working on those fast twitch muscles, moving his head constantly, right? Maybe firing off a combo, and then whoop, back to moving. Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson. All these guys took entire rounds to just work on that and nothing but that. Tyson recently on his podcast actually said that head movement drill that he did with Kevin Rooney, he would spend up to an hour just doing that, just moving his head, right? So you can't get good at something if you don't do it. It's one of the most important lessons that you can carry into boxing. If you want to get good at something, do that thing, right? So make sure to move your feet, move your head, right? It doesn't matter if you just pick one motion and you just hop, 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 work on that, hop, feints, right? A lot of guys don't think they need to practice feints, but it's actually a very intricate motion that you want to do. You don't want to just pretend you're punching all the time. All it takes to trick the opponent's subconscious mind is just a twitch, right? You throw the jab, and then the next one you just twitch your shoulder. Boom. It doesn't even have to be that extravagant. You just boop, little motion, hop, right? Little things. You want to practice your feinting. You want to practice your feet. And if you want to do cool shit, right? Like on some Canelo or Floyd Mayweather or Roy Jones type of footwork, you need to practice that. It's not just gonna come to you in a fight. Everything that you've seen a fighter do in the ring, they have done in practice, right? Even things like this, where they're just showing off. Whatever your style, whatever it is that you want to work on, whatever you want to bring into a fight, you have to practice in training, right? And that includes your defensive motions. So when it comes to shadowboxing, always, always, always include the defense. Even if it's just a block, if it's a parry, right? These are all motions that your body has to go through in practice if it wants to be good at that in the fight. So always work on it just as much as you do on the output of your punches. So the last tip is to simulate a fight. And what I really mean is visualization. You don't want to just go in there throwing any punch that you want in any combination and just being happy and go lucky and pretend that you're this unstoppable force. You want to feel like an unstoppable force, but you don't want to fall into the trap of letting your ego think that you actually are. Because you can run into a guy that's just as bad as you are, except he's having a better day and you're going to get your ass kicked. Right? So when you shadowbox, you want to make sure that you're using the power of visualization. Right? You don't want to just sit there and shoot random shots. You want to imagine an opponent in front of you. For me, it was always the last guy to kick my ass. Even if I went like a year without losing, I would think about the last guy to kick my ass. Or maybe even the last guy that I sparred. Maybe I did some things wrong. I would picture him and I would watch his motions. I would think of shots that he threw in the fight, right? Sometimes I visualize my favorite fighters. Because to me, because I admire them and their level of skill is so high, I think about what it would be like to fight these guys. And I really put them on a pedestal. I think about the crazy speed that they have. How would I deal with their counter punches? And I think about all these things while I'm shadowboxing. It's the only way to improve. And it's actually how the human mind works. Visualization is a very powerful tool. At the University of Chicago, they actually did a study where they took 3 different groups and they wanted to determine if they could improve their free throws. So the first group, they had them practice shooting free throws every day for an hour. The second group, they had them visualize practicing free throws. So they weren't actually shooting any free throws. And the third group did nothing. At the end of the study, they found that the first group that actually practiced the free throws improved their free throws by 24%. The second group that only visualized practicing it, they were only thinking about it, improved their free throws by 23%. And the third group, no changes, as expected. That's insane. To me, that's a scientific breakthrough. And if there's nothing else that I say that tells you to go visualize, that should be it. Visualization is absolutely a powerful tool, and it's helped me work on techniques and even expose flaws. Right? Sometimes I would shadowbox and I would visualize, and I would catch my opponent, the one I'm imagining, my imaginary friend, counter me when I drop my hand low and don't bring it back. Right? So these are things that you want to do. You want to treat it realistically. Even when you're shadowboxing with a partner, that's another wonderful tool to improve your game and treat it like a real fight. Some beginners, they'll go in there and they'll act like their partner is not throwing punches back at them. You don't want to be this guy. You want to treat it like a real fight, react to every punch, work on your defense, work on your foot movement, right? And you want to work on improving all this through visualization or through shadowboxing with a partner if your imagination is not quite there yet or you don't have enough experience under your belt to picture an opponent in front of you. Definitely, every time you shadowbox, simulate the fight, treat it like a real fight, throw punches like you're trying to knock somebody's head off, and eventually those skills that you develop in shadowboxing will translate over into a real fight scenario when you actually need to kick somebody's ass. Yeah, so a quick bonus tip that I want to throw in here that's actually helped me a lot in increasing my hand speed is to shadowbox with these. Shadowboxing with gloves on is one of the best things that you can do. Not only will it help you be tremendously fast when you take these off, but it'll also help you realize what it actually feels like to fight with gloves on and get your muscles in your shoulders and overall in your body used to wearing gloves. The bigger gloves that you wear, the better that you are. So if you're competing with 8-ounce gloves, wear 18-ounce gloves when you're shadowboxing. Wear 16-ounce gloves when you're shadowboxing. Try to wear bigger gloves to get a heavier resistance, get your shoulders conditioned to keeping your hands up for long periods of time. And most importantly, which is something a lot of guys experience, is you won't be slowed down in the ring when you put on the gloves. Because it's not like hitting the heavy bag, right? When you're shadowboxing, there's no resistance there. And so it'll make you realize when to pull back. It'll make you realize how fast you actually are with the gloves. It'll make you realize how fast your hand returns. And then you can work on improving that with the gloves on, rather than doing it with bare hands and then being much slower or much worse off when you get in the ring, right? And if we're talking street fights, once you pop these bad boys off, your hands will be flying. Nobody will be able to touch you, right? So you always want to shadow box with gloves on when you can. I'm not saying always do it, because sometimes you want to work on your form and you want to work on something specific, so you need more stamina in the process. Maybe you need more shoulder endurance. But definitely shadow box with gloves on. Give it a shot. If you throw to your full potential every time while you have the gloves on, I promise you your hand speed will increase dramatically in just a few weeks. Every time I get a little slow from lifting weights or doing any kind of other body hacking experience that I do, or taking some time off of boxing, I always come back and immediately start shadow boxing with gloves on, and my speed dramatically increases and gets back closer to what it was. So the bonus tip is, shadow box with these, try it for a week, you'll thank me later. How much time you dedicate to shadow boxing will be totally up to you. Me personally, I like to shadow box for at least 5 rounds, not including one warm-up round, to get my muscles loose and get everything going. What I also like to do sometimes is I like to isolate rounds where I work on specific things. I don't do this all the time. Most of the time I'm simulating a fight in my head. I'm trying to replicate everything that will happen in the fight. But sometimes what I'll do is I'll take a round and I'll just work on footwork. Sometimes I'll just work on nothing but footwork and head movement for the entire 5 rounds. Sometimes I'll do footwork for a round. Next round I'll do head movement. Next round I'll just work on maybe specific combinations like 1-2 and I'm getting out of there, or work on my pull counters, and I'll isolate certain exercises that I want on things that I want to improve on. Right? So there's no right or wrong way to do it. Really what you want to do is treat shadow boxing as a legitimate exercise and as one of the best exercises out there for you to improve your game. It will help you build those habits so that you could be a monster on autopilot come fight time. I'll definitely have more content coming soon on some shadow boxing drills that you guys can do. This way you can see everything in action that we talked about here today, and give you a couple workouts for shadow boxing that you guys can get creative with and improve your game with. If you like the content, don't forget to jab that like button, subscribe for more updates, and check out the link in the description below to the book called The Art of the Sweet Science that dives into good detail on both the physical and mental aspects of the sport. I thank you guys for tuning in. I'm Sean with Brawl Brothers, and I'll brawl with y'all next time.